Today, the plan is to finish chapter 6. Okay, we're going to finish chapter 6, and then on Monday and Wednesday, we're going to do in-class activities, learning the bones and the bone markings, okay? So, your list that you have in the lab manual of bones and bone markings, for the lab practical, you will be identifying actual bones. You'll be identifying models, right? For the lecture test, you will have diagrams to label, okay? Or diagram set to match the answers with, okay? So, the same list, the things that you know for lab, you'll need to know for lecture. You're just knowing them on a model, or on a model in lab, and on a figure in lecture, okay? So, you're getting graded twice for the same knowledge, okay? All right, we finished on this slide on Wednesday. So just to remind us of our parts, because we're going to be using the names later on in class. The epiphysis is the end, and the diaphysis is the shaft. Okay, those are going to come back into play later. The shaft is compact bone with a hollow cavity in the middle, and then the epiphyses have spongy bone inside. Okay, now, new stuff. The structure of a flat bone now, instead of a long bone. Okay? So flat bones, there's no, it's not cylindrical, and there's no bone marrow cavity in the middle. There's not that medullary cavity, a big hollow opening. Instead, the whole inside is filled with spongy bone. Okay? Sandwiched between our two layers of our tight, compact bone. In flat bones, the spongy bone in there is called diploid. Okay? Diploid. It's a special name for the spongy bone within flat bone. Okay? Red marrow is found in the spongy bone of both long bones and the diploid of flat bones. That's where we're going to find our red marrow. The yellow marrow lives in that hollow medullary cavity of the long bones. And then in adults, the red blood cell production happens there in the red marrow. Specifically in the head of the femur and the humerus, in the sternum, and in the hip. Okay? When you are a baby, when you're a fetus, the red blood cell production starts in the liver. So you start out producing your blood cells there, and then you shift over to producing your cells in the bone marrow. All right. Histology of compact bone. We've already talked about some of this, but let's bring it back in now that we're talking about bones. Okay, the structural unit of compact bone is an osteon. And osteon is also called a conversion system. So, if you guys remember when we're talking about our histology section, the osteon is going to be a central canal, and then the osteocytes that surround it. Okay, so that's an osteon. And this right here is an osteon. Okay? It's a weight-bearing pillar. It's super, super strong. It's sometimes called twist resistor because if you look at the way the collagen fibers are laid down, each concentric circle, the collagen fibers are laid down in opposite directions. So you have collagen fibers this direction, and then the next layer in, the collagen fibers are this direction, and the next layer in, the collagen fibers are this direction. And remember, collagen fibers are really, really strong in the direction that they're laid. So, with it alternating back and forth, you're going to prevent twisting because you're going to have a collagen fiber preventing you from moving that direction. Okay? Inside of the osteon, you have a conversion canal or the central canal. Okay, so this is also called a central canal. What runs through that central canal? Do I remember? Right here in the middle. Blood vessels and and nerves. Yeah. Okay, blood vessels and nerves are going to travel through that. And the central canals, or converging canals, are going to run in the direction of the bone, so lengthwise through the bone. Okay. And then our Volkmann canals are also known as perforating canals. And they run, I spelled that wrong, perforating. Okay. And they run perpendicular, so they're going to run this way. Okay. So they connect those central canals to each other, and they connect it into the medullary cavity in the middle. Okay? So that's how the blood vessels and the nerves are going to get through the bone. Because once that bone is established and the ground substance hardens, it becomes calcified, and you can't really move things through it. So we've got to have holes already made for our blood supply and our nerves to get through. Okay? Then we have osteocytes. Remember, are just bone cells, the cells that are living in the bone. And they are living in little holes called lacunae. So, the little dots around here that you see, those are lacunae, and the osteocytes live there. Okay. And then finally, we have canaliculi between the osteons and between the osteocytes. So these canaliculi are these smaller lines that radiate out from that central canal. Okay? Those are the canaliculi. They're formed from the tight junctions, or not tight junctions, they're actually, what type of junctions are they? They're gap junctions, actually. Between the osteocytes. So all the little osteocytes in the little lacunae, in their little holes, the osteocytes are holding hands with each other from one lacunae to another. And so when the bone hardens around them, you end up with those little canals that the osteocytes are sitting in. Okay, so all of the osteocytes are all connected to each other through these little cell junctions, and they're able to communicate with one another. Okay? So that is our histology of our bone tissue, osseous tissue. Okay, any questions about those structures? They're kind of hard to see on the picture. Do you guys have a model of this in the lab? No. All right, so that's compact bone. Where is compact bone found in a long bone? Let's go back and look. Okay, so that's the compact bone that's going to be all around the edges of the bone. Really tight, really compact, really, really strong. Okay? Then, I guess I could use my clicker now. We're going to look at histology of the spongy bone. So what is inside the bone? Okay? There are no osteons. So you don't have a central canal with the osteocytes living outside of it. Because we have lots and lots of holes. So what happens is the blood supply can get into these spaces. And so the osteocytes are really, really close to it, and you don't need a little channel to get the blood vessels through. Okay, because it's already holding. So instead, we have these things called trabeculae, which are the bone struts. And they're all these little needle-like projections here are the trabeculae, and they stick to each other. You end up with irregular lamellae. Okay, they're all over the place. But the osteocytes are still connected by canaliculi because the osteocytes are still holding hands with each other. Okay? All right. So that's found within the flat bones and within the ends of the long bones. Okay? All right. inorganic part. Okay? And both of these are important to give you the structure of the bone. So first of all, the organic part. Our first component is cells. Okay, we've got a couple different types of cells. We have osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts. We have talked about osteoblasts and osteocytes before. What do osteoblasts do? They produce the bone, right? So we're going to say that they secrete osteoid now, okay? So they secrete osteoid. They secrete that ground substance, the fluid and the collagen. Okay, the collagen. Okay, so those are the osteoblasts. They produce the bone. Okay, what do osteocytes do? Yeah, they make up the bone. They're living there within the bone. Okay, so they make up the bone component. Okay, and then finally, osteoclasts. We haven't talked about these guys yet. But the job of osteoclasts are to break down bone. So, osteoblasts make and osteoclasts break down. Okay. So if we look at our picture here, we have an osteoprogenitor cell. This cell is going to become a bone cell. When he matures, he can become an osteoblast, which produces the matrix. And then some of those will become an osteocyte, which is the mature bone cell. He monitors, he just kind of sits there, he makes up the bone. But then white blood cells can live in the area and become osteoclasts, where they eat the dead bone, they get rid of it, and prepare it for remodeling. Okay? So osteoclasts break down. All right, so we've got our cells. That's organic. Okay? Then we also have the osteoid that the osteoblasts are producing, which is made up of ground substance and our collagen fibers. Okay, so we're laying down collagen fibers in that crisscross method to make our osteons really, really strong. Okay? The organic components are going to give us flexibility and tensile strength. Remember, collagen is really, really strong. Okay? But it also gives us a little bit of flexibility because collagen fibers are not laid right beside each other. There's some ground substance in there, so we get some flexibility. Okay? Then we also have an inorganic component of our bones, and these are the minerals. And so the minerals are inorganic. We call these hydroxyapatites. We have a hydroxyapatite crystals. They're mineral salts that form up the hard portion of the bone. So it gives us hardness and resistance to compression. Okay? So we have to have both of these components. We have to have organic and we have to have inorganic. So if you have brittle bone disease, where your bones are really, really brittle, what are you probably missing? You're missing the collagen fibers, the organic portion, okay, that gives you more of the flexibility of the bone. But then if your bones can also miss the inorganic component as well. Okay? So different diseases affect different organs. We need both. All right. So we talked about cartilage development. Now we need to talk about bone development. Where does bone come from? So let's back up here and say that as you are developing in your mama's belly and you are a baby, the first thing to develop is going to be your cartilages and your connective tissues. Okay, they develop first. Okay, then bone is going to come. So there's two different ways that bone can come into an area. This first one is the more simple way. It's called intramembranous ossification. So ossification is bone formation. Okay, so ossify is the form bone. And this is intramembranous. So the bone is going to develop inside of a fibrous membrane. So we've got our fibrous connective tissue membrane here, and then we have a few cells that become osteoblasts in the middle, and then they start laying down the matrix around them. And then that area gets bigger and bigger and bigger and fills up that fiber connective tissue area. Okay? We always start with spongy bone first, and then that spongy bone can be remodeled, and you get the compact bone around it on the outside. Okay? In your notes, it says that all of the bones formed for intramembranous ossification are flat bones. I put a little asterisk by there because the majority of them are flat bones, except the clavicles. Okay, so clavicles are also formed this way. They are not flat bones. Okay, but most of the bones of the skull are formed this way in your clavicles. So think skull up. Okay, so skull, clavicle. In your book, figure 611, well, through the process. Okay? But the important thing is that we are forming bone within fibrous connective tissue. Okay? And we need to know what type of bones are formed this way. All right, questions? Okay. Now, that leads us to the next one, which we're going to spend a little more time on. This other form of bone development is where all your other bones come from. So, head down, everything except clavicles. Okay, so all your other bones are formed this way. This is endochondral ossification. So we have ossification, bone formation, and endochondral means we're forming it within what? What does the chondra prefix mean? Cartilage. Right, so we're forming it within cartilage. So we're going to lay down hyaline cartilage first, and then we're going to ossify that hyaline cartilage. Okay? So the process is a little more complex than intermembranous ossification. The hyaline cartilage is there first, and it serves as a pattern. So you can see in this picture, we start out with a little bone, what looks like a little bone, but it's made of just cartilage. And then over time, we are going to add bone to that. Okay, so we break down the cartilage and replace it with bone. So what we end up with at the end of the process is something that looks like this. Okay? So you start out with a bone collar that surrounds the outside. So that's the first bone that's there. Then we have a primary ossification center where the bone is going to start growing inside the cartilage and fill it out. Okay? The hyaline cartilage is broken down, and bone is deposited into place. Okay? Now, on these long bones, it starts here in the middle. So you're going to have the middle part of the bone formed, and the ends are still going to be made of cartilage. Then, secondary ossification centers start in the middle of those ends. Okay? So we have our primary ossification center here, starting in the middle and building out. And then we have secondary ossification centers starting in those epiphyses, those ends. And they're going to move out from that middle. What we end up with, though, during growth is the shafts, or the diaphysis, and the two epiphyses, and a little line of cartilage between the two. Okay, that isn't filled in. That line of cartilage we're going to talk about on the next slide is called the epiphyseal plate cartilage, or your growth plate cartilage. So as long as you're still growing, there's still that little line of cartilage between the diaphysis and the epiphyses. And we're going to talk about how that flows in a second. All right? You also see at the ends of the bones, this articular cartilage, which is also hyaline cartilage left over. It's covering the surface of the bone. Okay? Questions about this process? Start with hyaline cartilage, you break down the cartilage, and you fill it in with bone. The osteocytes come in and lay down the matrix, and then it's mineralized, and you have nice, hard, strong bones. Okay. Notice the timeline across the top too. During development, this starts about week 9. So after fertilization of the egg, 9 weeks later, we are starting to form bones. So this happens pretty early. Okay, 3 months, you've got the bone formed in the middle but no ends. At birth, those secondary ossification centers are working, but we still have lots of cartilage at the end of the bones. And then in childhood through adolescence, you're growing and you have that epiphyseal plate of cartilage between the epiphyses and the diaphyses. Okay? Now, growth and length of long bones. So through adolescence, as your bones are growing, we have this process happening. So it mimics endochondral ossification. You start out with hyaline cartilage, and that grows, but then you replace it with bone. Okay, so it makes the length of the bones grow. Okay, so I'm going to try to draw a picture of what's happening here. Erasing this. Okay, so if this is our bone, and we're only going to look at one end. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, and here's our epiphyseal line. Okay, so inside of here is cartilage, but then there's bone over here and bone over here. Okay? On this side of the cartilage, up close to the epiphysis, the hyaline cartilage is growing, and you're adding more cartilage on, and it's going to push it up this direction. Okay? So over time, this line is going to move over here because we're adding more cartilage into that epiphyseal plate. Okay? So on this side, cartilage is growing. Okay. On the other end, the side that's closest to the diaphysis, the process that's happening is the cartilage is dying and being replaced with bone. So on this side, the bone is growing. And so it moves up. Okay? So little by little, cartilage grows, bone grows, cartilage grows, bone grows, cartilage grows, bone grows. And you end up making the bone longer and longer. Okay? And so that process just keeps on going through adolescence. Okay? So the cartilage growth occurs on the epiphyseal face, epiphyseal face, goodness gracious, which is the side closest to the epiphysis, while the bone growth occurs at the diaphyseal face. Okay, so the side closest to the shaft or the diaphysis. And eventually that will push and push and push and make the bone longer. Epiphyseal plate closure though. Okay, so over time, that cartilage growth slows down. Okay, and it slows down enough that the bone growth catches up to it. And that's going to close that hole, and it's no longer going to have hyaline cartilage there. Okay? It's going to be fully bone, because the bone has caught up with the cartilage. When that happens, your growth plate is no longer there, your epiphyseal plate is no longer present, and that's the end of longitudinal growth, the end of your bones lengthening. Okay? And when that happens, you are as tall as you will ever be. Okay? What questions do you have about that process? Okay. All right, so the same type of thing. You're getting rid of cartilage and replacing it with bone. Okay, so that, yeah. So it depends on how severe it is. There are cases where you can break the growth plate severely enough that when it's replaced with the collagen fibers, that it prevents that process from happening. And so some severe growth plate breaks will prevent your bones from ever growing again. And they're stuck at that size. There are some things they can do. There are some surgeries that can do the bone lengthening surgeries, but that involves a series of breaks. So you break the bone and spread it, and then allow it to form the callus and reform the bone a little bit longer. And then later you'll have to break the bone again and spread it and let it grow. You're shaking it no. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? Yes, it's bad. That's also a treatment for chondroplasia, which is a form of dwarfism, a way of lengthening bones to get you closer to average height. They can do that if they break the bones and spread them apart and let them fill in. Not pleasant. All right. So, any other questions before we keep moving on? Okay. So that's growth in length. But we also have growth in width. So our bones are wider now than they were when you started out as a baby. Okay, because your legs are bigger, your arms are bigger, you need bigger bones. Okay, so the bone can also grow in apositional growth. Remember, that's adding to the girth, to the outside of it. Okay? So the osteoblasts, remember they're laying down the matrix that's underneath the periosteum, secrete bone matrix on the external bone surface. So again, we go back to our anatomy of a bone. The periosteum is that connective tissue layer on the outside of the bone. So it's just the little osteoblasts right here on the surface will secrete more bone. And then you have osteoclasts. What do the osteoclasts do? Break it down. So as the osteoblasts are building on the surface, the osteoclasts are on the endosteal surface, which is the inside of this medullary cavity, and they're removing bone from the inside of your back. So that's going to make you go wider. You're building up on the outside and breaking down in the medullary cavity. Okay? But you usually have more building than breaking down. So as those osteoblasts build on the outside, the osteoclasts move slowly on the inside, making the medullary cavity bigger, but you end up with a thicker bone because the osteoclast works slower. Okay? All right, this leads us to a concept called bone remodeling. Okay? So, bone deposit by the osteoblasts and bone removal, okay, or resorption, happens due to those osteoclasts. Okay, so the osteoclast breaking it down is also called bone resorption. Reabsorb the minerals. Okay, but these two work together in a process called bone remodeling. We can change the bone. So deposit occurs where the bone is injured. So if you have a crack or if you have a fracture that we're going to talk about later, then this happens at a high rate. Okay, you're building up and you're breaking down. But it also happens where added strength is needed. Okay? This is what gives you your bone marking. So the bumps out where the muscles are attached, those get bigger and bigger as that muscle is used. So the muscle is used, it pulls on it. You need a stronger area where that muscle attaches, and so that bone marking will grow over time. If you are, oh, I don't have it on there, never mind. Don't worry about it. Okay, an osteoid seam is the site of the new matrix deposit by osteoblasts. So you can see these little seams, these little areas where the osteoblasts have come in and laid down new matrix that's still mostly organic, that the inorganic minerals haven't come in and solidified it yet. Okay, so that makes up an osteoid seam. The bone resorption, breaking down, happens by osteoclasts, which we've already talked about. And then the osteoblasts and osteoclasts work together as a unit. Okay? Every year, remodeling, this process replaces 5 to 10% of your skeleton. And your whole skeleton is replaced about every 10 years, which is pretty cool. If you think of your skeleton being solid and just the same, but it gets replaced in about every 10 years. Some bones are replaced faster than others. So the distal portion of your femur, so the part down here between your knee joint, is fully replaced about every 5 to 6 months. So it's broken down and put back together. Yeah. So that's part of it. Along with the bone growth, you have nerve growth, and then the nerves have to figure out what they're doing. That gets into it too. And then there's still a lot of question as to exactly what growing pains are, because it's hard to pinpoint and detect what exactly is going on in the person. Yeah, yeah. The bones are growing very, very quickly, along with everything else in your body there. But this process continues to grow it going. Like I'm doing bone remodeling right now. And all people do it, so just slower. Okay. So we've got to control this process. We can't just have bones being broken down and built up willy-nilly. Okay, so there's two main things that control bone remodeling. The first one is hormonal control. The whole goal of hormonal control of bone remodeling is to maintain calcium levels. That's it. The hormones do not care how much force is on your bones. They don't care how thick your bones are. They don't care how thin your bones are. They are just getting your blood calcium level to where it needs to be. So if your blood calcium level gets too low, they're going to go to your bones and say, give us some more. And the osteoclast will come through and break it down and send that calcium back into your blood. If it has too much blood calcium, it will say, hey, osteoblasts, come here, lay us down some more bone so that we can send the calcium into your bones. Okay, so it's either turning on osteoblasts or turning on osteoclasts. Okay, so low blood calcium, we need to break down some bone so that we can get some more calcium in the blood. So the parathyroid hormone, which is here on your thyroid, down in your neck, the parathyroids are these little dots on it, parathyroid will release parathyroid hormone, which indirectly stimulates your osteoclast to resorb the bone, to break it down. Okay? It does this indirectly because parathyroid hormone will activate osteocytes, which then release another chemical, which then turns on the osteoblast. So it's an indirect mechanism, but the parathyroid hormone is the one that starts it. Okay? When the osteoclasts resorb the bone, break it down, the calcium then goes into the blood. If, on the other hand, you have high blood calcium, another hormone called calcitonin will inhibit bone resorption. So it will turn off those osteoclasts, so they're no longer breaking down the bone. Okay? It also encourages calcium deposit into the bone that you have. Okay, so taking the calcium out of the blood, putting it back into the bone. Okay? That make sense? Okay. So that is one way to control bone remodeling. Based solely on calcium in the blood, we use hormones. We also, though, remodel due to stress on the bones. Okay, this is kind of what I was talking about the muscles and the points of attachment. So if you are a load bone, a load-bearing bone, like the femur, bending stress is exerted. As you put weight on that bone, the bone's going to bend. And then as it bends, there is a way that the cell picks up that information that the bone has been bent, and it will know where to thicken the bone to make it stronger to withstand that bending. Okay? So bending compresses bone on one side. Okay, so if we put force over here, it's going to bend the bone this direction. It compresses here, and it stretches it, and has tension on the other side. Now, it says on here, mechanical forces may regulate the remodeling by electrical signaling. What is thought to be happening is that when this happens, ions start moving in between the cells, and those ions moving can turn on cells on one side to make bone more, turn off cells on the other to get rid of bone on the other side. Okay? But we can remodel our bones to withstand different types of forces. Okay, this leads to a discussion about stress fractures. Okay, anybody in here have a stress what you did to get your stress fracture? You walked a lot. Okay, were you used to walking a lot? Okay, what usually happens with stress fractures, if we're going to use this as a learning thing, it's repetitive motion. Okay, it's a repetitive motion on your load-bearing bones. So bones usually in your lower extremity, okay, that are being repetitively moved on. And it sometimes happens too when you are switching exercises. So maybe it's something you've not done before, but then you go in at full force and you like power through it the first time. That can also lead to stress fractures. And it's because of this remodeling process. So if you put force on the bone, it says, oh, I need to remodel to build up this side because I have lots of force being put on it right now. And so osteoclasts will come in there and start breaking down the bone so that osteoblasts can come in and build up the bone on the other side. But if you keep putting force on it, you're over activating those osteoclasts. So there's going to be a lot of osteoclasts that are breaking down the bone before the osteoblasts have time to get in and fix it. Okay? So you weaken your bone and then have more impact, which can then cause a break or a little crack. Okay? So stress fractures come because of this bone remodeling process. That's why training in multiple disciplines, so you're doing multiple things that build up the same muscles is good because you're not putting the same stress on that bone every day. Okay. All right, fractures. Great segue into this next section. So there's different types of fractures based on what happens to your bone. So we're going to go over them quickly and then how a fracture heals. Okay, first type, comminuted. It looks lovely, doesn't it? Make sure that you can identify what type of break it is from a picture. Okay, if we show you a picture, make sure you know which one it is. Okay, in a comminuted fracture, the bone is going to fracture into multiple pieces. It kind of cracks and breaks into a bunch of little pieces. It's particularly common in the age whose bones are more brittle. So as you age, your bones get brittle, and then when something hits them, you can crack them and shatter them into different places, different pieces. Okay, a compression fracture happens when the bone is crushed. So we see this again a lot of times in elderly when they have porous bones due to osteoporosis. Okay, but we also see it in cases of trauma or when you have a fall, which I guess is the case of trauma as well. But it's where a lot of pressure has been pushed on that bone, and then it just kind of cracks and breaks into a lot of pieces as well. Okay, so there are our first two. Okay, then we have a spiral. This one is the roughest one. Okay, so what causes a spiral fracture is a twisting of the bone. Okay, but you've got joints on either end, right? If this is your tibia, you've got a joint down here on your ankle, you've got a joint up here at your knee, and so those are stationary. But if something in the middle tries to twist it, it's going to cause the bone to break. Beautiful. Okay, so we see these a lot of times in sports injuries. Okay, because there's multiple instances of twisted in places they don't need to go. Yeah. So what happened to the bone itself? Was it shattered into little pieces? Was it? Okay, I'd have to look at a picture to know what kind of person. Okay. What is that? All right. So it depends on how it's cracked. It could be a compression fracture, but what I'm guessing is it was probably this guy, the comminuted fracture instead. Because compression is more of instead of something hitting it, it would be squished. Okay. So we got a spiral. Okay. This is your growth plate fractures that we were talking about, or epiphyseal. It happens more often when the growth plate is still cartilaginous, but it can happen after it's fused together as well. Okay, but the epiphysis separates from the diaphysis along the epiphyseal plate. Lovely, right? Tends to occur where those cartilage cells are dying. So down here at the diaphyseal side, where the cartilage is dying and the bone is replacing it. Okay? All right. Okay, so a depressed fracture is when a broken bone is pressed inward, which is seen a lot in blunt force trauma to the skull. So like if you hit somebody with a hammer, the skull is going to bend in, it's going to depress. Okay. I don't know why it's so funny, but it cracks me up. So that's a depressed fracture. All right. And then finally, a green stick fracture. The bone breaks incompletely, much in the way a green twig breaks. So only one side of the shaft breaks. So it may bend. Okay, if I push on my pin like this, it may bend and crack on this side, but stay together on this side. Okay, like a stick would when you try to break it. We see this a lot in children whose bones have more organic matrix and are more flexible than the adults. Okay, so you get that flexibility in it, which allows this side to kind of bend instead of breaking in two. All right. So, how do you repair a fracture? You go to the doctor, and then they fix it for you. Okay, one, you're going to have a setting of the bone. Either they can do it outside the skin if it is easy enough to do, but they may have to do surgery to go in there and align the bones together. But then you put it in a cast, and you just kind of let it do its thing, right? Because fractures can heal on their own. Okay, the first step of this natural healing process is a hematoma formation, which is the blood in the area. Okay, so you'll end up with a lot of blood in the area because you've broken all those blood vessels that ran through the bone. Remember all those central canals, the reversion canals, all the perforating canals? They all have blood vessels in them. So there's lots of blood going on here. Okay, so we go form a beautiful thick hematoma. Okay, second step. Our fibrocartilage comes in and forms a callus. So this is kind of like the healing of the skin that we talked about earlier, but we're going to lay down a bunch of collagen fibers, and it's going to hold the pieces together and hold it in place. Okay? You need to set it before this happens, because once this happens, this is the way the bone's going to grow back together. So, has anybody had probably not, but I'm just going to ask them. Anybody had a bone that was broken that didn't get set? Did you move to the doctor? Okay. My brother-in-law broke his hip and didn't go to the doctor because they didn't know it was broken. Anyway, it's a long story. But it fused back together. It grew back in place, in the wrong place. And so then he had to go to the doctor to get it rebroken and set and start the process all over again. All right, so the callus forms a fibrocartilage, a bunch of collagen fibers, but then a bony callus forms. So it's that endochondral ossification stuff that's happening. We're coming in, we're tearing down the fibers, and we're replacing them with bone. Okay, so we have a bony callus, still isn't exactly the right shape, but it's holding things together. And then bone remodeling will occur. So osteoclasts will come in and break down and give you a medullary cavity again. Osteoblasts put down cells where we need them. Okay? All right. Homeostatic imbalances. This is what your quiz is on, so this should be review of stuff you know. Okay, osteomalacia is soft bones in adults. So we have soft, we have more of that organic components and less of the inorganic components. So we have osteoid produced, the organic component, but the calcium salts aren't deposited. In adults, we see pain when weight is pushed on it. And a common thing that you see in these patients are pseudofractures. Okay, so pseudofractures, they look like fractures on an x-ray, but they're not a real fracture. They're going to be lines of just the osteoid that hasn't been calcified. Okay? The pseudofracture osteoblasto. Okay, but then in children, we call this rickets. Okay, so soft bones in the kids. You get bowed legs and deformities in the pelvis and the skull and the rib cage. Both of these diseases are caused by lack of vitamin D or insufficient calcium intake. So you're not getting in the calcium for it to be deposited on the bone. Okay? We can cure it by giving them vitamin D fortified milk so they get plenty of vitamin D. Let them sit out in the sunshine for a little bit, make their own vitamin D, and then they can get their calcium absorbed into their body. Yeah. You know, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. You want to look it up? Okay. Look it up and show me. Okay. But you not know the answer. All right. Next, osteoporosis. This was another one that was on your quiz. In osteoporosis, the bone reabsorption, so those osteoclasts are working faster than the osteoblasts. So we're breaking down bone faster than it's being rebuilt. So things that cause this, age, so as you get older, this is more likely to happen. And the age comes in with these other things too. So decline in sex hormones. Estrogen does a really good job of maintaining calcium levels in your bones. After menopause, though, women's estrogen levels drop significantly. So you no longer have that estrogen that helps keep calcium on your bones. So as you get older, girls, osteoporosis is a problem. Immobility. So that rebuilding process, the breaking down and building up, happens because of pressure that you put on your bones. Okay? It says, hey, I need to build some more over here instead of over here. So if you become immobile and you're not putting pressure and weight on your bones, that remodeling process slows down. Okay? Poor protein or calcium intake and corticosteroid use. So certain drugs can also lead to osteoporosis. Okay, Paget's disease, excessive bone formation and breakdown. Initially, there's a weakening of the bones because the osteoclast activity is stronger, but then osteoclasts kind of slow down, and you end up with a thickening of the bones because the osteoblasts are still working. It usually happens only in certain areas in the body, so not everywhere. It may be initiated as virus, and this shows up later in life. Okay, so I got like 5 minutes, right? We're going to finish this up. Because I only have, I don't have 5 minutes to it. I have now. Okay. Development is not on the objective, so we are done.